Grace and peace. Come on in. We'll give you a few more moments. We are running a little late. I'm sure that some of you are not surprised, but my name is Apostle. Well, my name is colleague Chris, and I am the senior pastor for Church for All Nations, and I am an apostle in the Lord's Church, and this is my wife.
Yes, Lady Damaris, Chris, grace and peace, everyone. Good evening.
So I want you all to do me a favor. I want you to like and share. This is really going to help the body of Christ. So listen, you might want to get some popcorn. You might want to get your Bibles. You might want to get some notes. You might want to get some friends on, tag somebody, call somebody, tell them, baby, they talking about the taboo. Them Christians have lost their mind. But I want to encourage you to tune in tonight because this is a subject that we don't talk about often as it relates to the church and the body of Christ. And I believe that this is one of the reasons why a lot of our marriages are not healthy and not successful. And so I just want to give you a few moments to get in here, see if we can get these numbers up. I need y'all to hit that like button and tap on the screen and send some notifications in, tag somebody. We're going to really talk deep. We're going in. We're going all the way in. We're going all the way in tonight. So I want you to hit those like buttons, share this topic, because we have to talk about this. This is one of those areas that we in the church don't do a good job with. And we have a lot of sex going on in the church, but we don't really spend time addressing it and talking about the challenges in holy matrimony. We know the scripture that the bed is undefiled and marriage is holy, but we don't really spend a lot of time talking about, what goes on in the bedroom. And we don't talk about the parameters around it. Now, let me, while we're gathering ourselves, and don't forget tonight, stay to the end. We're going to release a coupon for our conference. So you'll be able to get in here and release a coupon. I'm going to get the coupon code you would have to inbox me for it, but I will give you the code to give you a tremendous discount. But we need to talk about this subject. This is so important for us to deal with, and we're not ashamed to deal with it, and we're not afraid to deal with it. It's very difficult. It could be very challenging, but I'm going to deal with this tonight. So let me talk about marriage in the beginning, and then I'm going to delve into the real hot topic. Okay. So right now, as it stands, in the last year or so, the divorce rate in marriage, or the success rate in marriage, well, I'll say the divorce rate is around 56%. And it teeters between 56-53%. COVID actually, kind of helped with those numbers because people were afraid to get divorced and the courts were shut down. But also it increased domestic violence, and a lot of abuse and alcoholism ran through the roof. And so we had all those things happening. So with that being said, when you think about, if you thought about that percentage, knowing that people are still getting married, and that, but not at the high rates that they were. And so in the Christian church, we would encourage marriage, not for the sake of, of course it was part of purpose and plan, but it wasn't for the sake of holy matrimonial purpose. It was really so that people won't end up pregnant. So that was a lot of that. And pull that scripture up, sweetheart. The Bible says it's better to marry than to burn with passion. And so that was a lot of the reason why we talked about it. So y'all come on in, because we might open this up to let you come on and chat with us if you are so daring to do so. But the reason why we push a lot of young people into marriage was not for the sake of building family or community. It was really just sexual burdens. And so we had a lot of that going on in the church, and so we would push that narrative out to the various ones. And so they said, well, you don't want to get married and then to deal with pregnancy, and because that will bring a certain staunch and stain on the church. And so people did not necessarily want to marry for that reason, because it caused a lot of disgrace, a lot of embarrassment. And so people were really, I don't want, man, listen, I'm having sex, I'm burning up, but I'm not really, I'm not getting married, and this is not good. And so we would really just marry so that we won't get caught. And then what happened was, which is even worse in my opinion, that they will marry after the baby was in the womb, to prevent the stain, or to prevent the stigma of divorce. So that was another reason why a lot of people didn't marry, because they did not want people to know that they had sinned, right? Or that they had got caught, and that they had, did these things. So that was another reason why people would get divorced. I mean, get married and have children out of wedlock, because they were afraid of the stigma that came along with unwed pregnancy. And then we would do what we called years ago called shotgun weddings,
Mm.
right? Where you would, man, if you don't marry my daughter, I'm gonna shoot you. If you don't marry my if y'all don't get married, I'm going to blow your head off. And then what would happen oftentimes too, which was also challenging. We did a lot of things in the church for the sake of trying to remain holy. We would send the child away, to the South until they had the baby, and then so that they wouldn't deal with it then. And then what we would do, and this is probably the most horrific part of it all, we would make our children get divorced, get abortions, to hide it, at young ages. So that's a lot of ways we went by trying to cover up this divorce, and or excuse me, this infidel or sex, or fornication, as we call it. So the church went through a lot of these things to try to cover up this shame. Okay. So now, and when we still don't want to talk about it. We still don't want to address it. We still don't want to have the conversation regarding sexuality in the church. And now we have this whole agenda, we have this same sex agenda going on, and which is centered around sex. So there's a lot of that happening right now. And there's no real talk about it. Most of our children, or most of us, learn about sex from the street, from pornography, from movies. Not, some rarely, you may have a conversation with your daughter or son about sex, especially in the church. We don't really want to have that conversation, because we think if we have a conversation, we're going to encourage kids to have sex. And we don't want to give out contraceptions. We don't want to warn them about various things. And by the time we do that, we're yelling at them. We're making them feel like they're dirty if they did, and then they have to be left with all of the ways of coping with that. And let me help you all. That transcends into adulthood. That does not stop with the child being the child or the young. That transcends and being to the adulthood. And I know that the reason why we run from this is because we really don't appreciate the beauty in sex and sexuality. We don't really appreciate what God gave us in that respect. And so we typically run from it. Everybody's doing it on some level. And we see all the scandals, and we have these apostles and pastors and people coming out of the closet and getting caught on videos, and all those things are happening, and they're amongst us, the body of Christ. And and even when we're having those conversations, there's a sense of shame, there's a sense of, or whether or not there's acceptance, whether or not there is some form of godliness to it. And so we always run from this subject unless we're faced with it. And then when we're faced with it, we gossip about it. It becomes some dirty conversation about it. Whereas if we had dealt with it and confronted it, because the Bible deals with it on some level, but not on the level that we should probably take that and maybe make sense of it all. And then we have this issue where we don't really teach on how the body responds to sex, and what sex means to men and what sex means to women, and how our bodies are handle sex or sexuality or the desire or the passion for such. We don't talk to those things. We just kind of figure it out as we go. And like I said, we typically get a lot of our education from experiences that are not healthy, pornography, conversation with the boys at the barbershop. Maybe you might get lucky to have a father who might talk to you about it, but it's always some kind of taboo. Is never to tell you why your bodies work the way they work, how your bodies are sexual, and you are sexual beings, and you desire sex, and that is a natural desire. When you are, when your body is, your endorphins or your hormones are kicking up, that's a natural desire. It's not you're dirty or you're bad, or it's your body is made to do this.
Yes.
Right. And men are seed bearers. We don't tell men, God bless you, Lady Davis, we don't tell men that they're seed bearers, right? That they're reason why they're even they're here to distribute seed into the woman's body to make babies. That's what their body's for. That's what it is. And so there's a whole dynamic going on with men and women that we don't talk about. That's just natural, right? It's just the way God made you. And so because God made you that way, your body responds a certain way, and sometimes people have a higher libido and a lower libido. What's libido, right? I mean, I never heard the word libido. Good to see Lady Paige. I never heard the word libido in church. I didn't hear that until I became an adult. Right. But now we got to deal with this stuff because, a lot of women and a lot of men are very sexually frustrated, not satisfied, not being pleased. And it's like, well, why? Because you may marry someone who has this other kind of appetite and who has been around and does different things. But we don't really talk to that because we got to figure it out. You hook up, you get horny, you make love, boom, bye. You're trying to figure it out. And there's all kinds of things that go along with the body in that regard, right? That means the erection aspect and the lubricating aspect, and as you get older, your body changes and your desires change and your drive changes. And how do I keep my drive? And how do I maintain my sexual prowess, my sexual stimulation? How do I continue to make my body want that? These are all the things that we don't talk about in the body of Christ, and therefore we are left to the world to help us understand them without the proper framework, without the proper guidance, without the proper structure on how to get our bodies and how to make your bodies function the way you want to function. So these are a lot of things that we don't deal with in church. So therefore, now this is statistics is going to bother you, and it's going to be very shocking. So we have 57% of marriages end in divorce. And this is going to shock you, right? Out of those 56% of marriage in a divorce, within 5 years, 84% of those people remarry. So think about that for a moment. Think about that 84% of the people who divorce. Now, anybody who's gone through divorce know it's traumatic, it's difficult. And just on a side note, we don't even deal with those matters properly in the church. Divorce and heartbreak and devastation, we just gossip about it. We talk about, well, I don't think they're together no more. Well, child, they don't separate. Well, who done did what? But you don't talk about the person who was hurt, man. That both of them were hurt. Both of them, no matter with the violator or whoever reason why they both were hurt. There was both devastation, trauma, if you will. And that is traumatic to go through a divorce. In fact, I'll tell you that the most difficult thing I've ever experienced was a divorce. I've been shot, I've been stabbed, I've been cut, but man, a divorce was like, good Lord. And we don't prepare you for that, right? So we have to suffer in silence. We can't talk about it, right? We can't get healing from it. We might get a sound bite in church or a cliche that may help us feel some kind of way or validate it when a preacher says something that refers to our situation. Well, child, don't you stand for nobody, don't respect you. You go ahead and preach. See, that's as far as we go. But we don't sit you down and let you realize all the pain you went through that and how you need to heal and recover and how you need to restore. And are you okay? You got these lonely nights now. Here it is, you with this person 24 hours a day, living in your house. And now either you have to move or they move. That's devastating. Yes. That's devastating. And you might say, well, I prefer the peace. But yes, in that peace, there is still a form of trauma that you have to deal with. And I remember I used to work for a matrimonial law firm. And in this law firm, a lot of these people were wealthy, they were rich, and they were getting divorced. And a lot of them got married for the sake of business. The blessing, God bless you, Lady McNeil, got married for the sake of business, got married for the sake of some kind of financial instrument. And so, but they were now ready to divorce, and it never ended like that. It didn't seem like a contract, like we're just going our separate ways. These women were crying. Men were angry, and they were like, this was the arrangement. We were going to marry for 10, 15 years. We had prenuptial agreements in place. We took the benefit, but when they got divorced, man, it was devastating. And I was shocked because I thought, okay, well, these people, out here just getting divorced, and it's part of the arrangement. But no, you cannot live with somebody for 10, 15 years and then not have concern or feeling, or that person eventually becomes a part of you. And so when the Bible says, and they became one, the more time you spend with somebody, the more of that person, the mannerisms, personality you take on. And so for us in the body of Christ to get divorced and to have to go through this without any ministry, without any counseling, without any therapy, without any help from the community that we're part of, other than the scandal, the scar, the taboo around it, it's detrimental to us in the body of Christ. And so we have to become more open and more willing to address these issues openly, because people really need to be healed and restored. And let me tell you what happens. Many of you understand this. If once they get divorced, right, and they never get ministry, they never get healing, they never get those issues resolved, they go into another marriage with all those inhibitions, all those fears, all those insecurities, all that trauma, all that abuse, whatever they're dealing with, and they drag it into another marriage. And just so you know what those statistics are, right? So second marriages are somewhere at 67% divorce rate. So it's even higher than the first marriage. But this is what we're talking about tonight. Do you know that people who are, so let's do the numbers. I want to walk you through this for a few moments, because this is really interesting. Many of you know I'm a numbers guy. Lady, could you have anything you want to say before I move forward?
Well, yeah, you said a lot, but yeah, that's good. It's all true. It's all facts. And definitely children need to hear from their parents about sex for themselves. They need that counseling. It should begin at home. Now, if you remember back in elementary school, and I believe they are still doing it now, where I remember being in 5th grade where they separated the boys and the girls. And the boys, they would go off with the gym teacher, the girls, or with the health teacher or a teacher. Everybody was separated. And we were taught about the woman's body because we were going into that change. We were young. We were going to head into middle school. And, us young girls, we had to learn about our menstruals that were coming. And of course, it sounded yucky. It was like, ew, and da. But you know what? The public school system was preparing us. And I believe they're still doing that now. The boys, I don't know what they learned, but I'm sure they taught the boys, young men, about what's going to happen with them. And they were going into these stages called puberty, right? And so I just wanted to look up the word puberty just to properly define it, which is the onset of puberty, the time in life when a person becomes sexually mature, typically occurs between ages 8 and 13 for girls and ages 9 and 14 for boys. So this is important. Now, the school would talk to the kids about it, but the children also need to hear it from their parents. Now, back in the day, they would call it the birds and the bees, right? We need to have that talk, and some children kind of felt it coming on, and kind of felt ilky, like, oh, dad's going to talk to me about, oh, it's that time. And yes, it's that time, because you should hear it from your mother, you should hear it from your father. You should not find out about it, on TV, on social media. We need to talk about this at home. And you're right, it's not talked about enough in ministry. When you go to church, we need to talk about it, because children are still being born. Children are still going through stages of development, and we need to minister. And we'll hear the preaching about it and the talk against it. Like, yeah, that's why, and if you do this and if you don't do that, then that's why your daughter is this and your son is that. No, okay, that may be true, but sit down and let's have a discussion about it. Let's talk to our young people about what's going on. I'm going to say something that many may not agree, but I'm talking about from my experience as I look hindsight now with the dating. Now, most of us will agree that, okay, well, it's good to date, at a young age. I'm not talking about now, but at a young age is good, because then you'll know what it feels like, and, to be in love. And if that person is not for you, it just doesn't work. And so what do? What is the pattern? You move on. Okay, we get together, we hook up, whatever, doesn't work. Okay, it hurts. I'm a little traumatic because I wanted it to work, or vice versa, it doesn't work. And what do? You pick up and you move on. And this has been practiced. Do you see what's happening here?
Yeah.
This practice of breaking up has become so dangerous. And so now, to the point when the real one comes along, you have this mindset, well, if it doesn't work, I'll do like I've always been doing.
Yeah.
We'll break up and I'll move on. I'll break up and I'll move on. And yeah, that has been the cycle. So then we wonder why years down the road, why the divorce rate, because we've become so desensitized. It's like nothing. Okay, it doesn't work. All right. We don't know how to stick it in, stay into the marriage or whatever, and just keep it going, and just strengthen our hearts, and just stay strong through it.
Yeah.
We don't know how to do that, because you know what? I don't like how you talk to me. I don't like what you're doing. You know what? Let's go our separate ways. We don't know how to stay together. And so I looked at it hindsight now, the patterns so that's why patterns are important. We have to be mindful of our patterns.
Yeah. And you have to know what your capacity is.
Yes.
Right. How much you can take. And if you are a candidate for marriage. And so, yeah. And now let me talk about, I want to kind of get into this now. So you say, now let's talk about the numbers for a moment. I'm a numbers guy, right? So, and I want to welcome all of you who are coming on. Please share this. Please tag somebody. Listen, it doesn't hurt to share with somebody. I know people don't want to talk about this subject because it's, child, I'm not desperate. I'm not horny. But listen, we're not talking about that. We really want you to understand that this is one area that we as Christians don't really talk about until it's brought up in some kind of scandal. Right. Or we have our little circles and we're talking about this, but we don't really deal with this like we should. But let's talk about the numbers again. So 56% of divorce rates is divorce rate. So if you knew you had 56% of the chance of leaving the house and you won't make it back, many of us won't leave the house. It's a huge, huge number, right? So if you think that it's 56% chance that you will die, you will not probably leave the house a lot of times. Okay. And nobody will blame you. All right. With that being said, there is, out of that 56%, let's say, for instance, say 10%, 10 to 20% of those people who are still married, stay married for the sake of the children. They're not happy. They're not really having a good time in their marriage, but they realize, you know what? It's better. It's cheaper to keep her. It's better to stay home. It's better to keep my assets. It's better to keep the kids safe. Let me stay in this marriage. I'm not getting what I need. I'm not being fulfilled, but you know what? I'm going to stay in this marriage. Now, so with that 56%, you have another, say, 20% of people who are in marriages that they're not happy in. And they just stay in that marriage for the sake of just trying to keep their stuff, which is a lot, right? So now you have a lot of infidelity. You have a lot of things going on outside the marriage. And in that number, 15% of those who are still married, right, are in a sexless marriage. Sexless, which means they're not even having sex, not with each other. They may be having sex outside of the marriage, but they're definitely not having sex inside the marriage. So if you think about that, if you think about those numbers, it should alarm a lot of us who are who are dealing with people in our lives who are married. As a pastor, as a leader, that concerns me because I've had those conversations. I've had, people say to me down through the years, Pastor, he don't even touch me no more. And they're like, man, I can't even get her to make love to me no more. And these are real concerns, right? Because these things drive people to divorce. And it's actually one of the highest reasons why people divorce is for lack of intimacy, a lack of sex satisfaction. Or the other thing is true, which means that they get caught in infidelity because they're not getting what they need from the one they're married to. And the question is, well, why? Well, there's a plethora of reasons why, but you never even take time to have the conversation as to why. And there could be a lot. And one of the major reasons why is because of satisfaction. There is a lack of satisfaction in the marriage. And, the man typically thinks he knows what he's doing, right? We think we know what we're doing. And the woman's like, well, listen, that ain't hitting it. And we don't have that conversation because we've never been taught to ask our wives, what they like, or, have that conversation about sexuality and what pleases you. We just, again, we learn from pornography. We learn from videos. We learn from things that we've seen in the world and heard our voice and just figured it out as we went. But, when you're watching pornography, those are professionals. Those body parts are not normal, right? Those are people who are, it's like watching an athlete run a 100-yard dash in a matter of 7 seconds. You can't do that. I mean, he look like you may have the same build, but you can't run that fast. You see somebody, grabbing muscles and grabbing stuff on TV. You can't do what they do. And so a lot of these guys, a lot of these women, everybody who you see on these in pornography, now this is what's stuck in our minds, right? Pornography, you got these guys with these huge, parts, and these women with these credible body parts. So that stuff is not real. And so now what you're dealing with this false sense of reality, right? And you look at these people thinking they're going for hours at a time. You ain't going for hours. I mean, listen, your body's not made for that. And there's a lot of abuse in that situation. There's a lot of drugs associated with that. There's a lot of mental issues going on there that you are not privy to that make that happen. But you don't know that. You just looking at what's on that screen or what's on your phone or what's in your computer. And a lot of our men and women become addicted to pornography. And so now that becomes their thing. And the more you engage in this, the more calloused, right, that you become as it relates to being able to, your sensitivity becomes much more dulled, right? I don't know what the word is, but you tend to think you can do more or want more. That's not satisfying, so you start thinking about other stuff. You start getting into all the kinds of sexuality, perversions and multiple partners and orgies. And then you start taking on what you see on TV and thinking that you can do that. Well, how would it be to do that? I want to explore. I'm curious. You're opening up your spirit, right, to all these things that really isn't healthy for you. And so now you start hearing about pastors who have multiple partners and have these sex parties and swinging and carrying on. Leaders in the church, right? And so now we have this sense that we don't deal with it, and we got to talk about what that is. And again, people hate this conversation. So that's one of the reasons why it's frightening to know. I should say frightening, but it's very, how do I say this? Uh, it's hard to realize that, here it is, and you're in a marriage and you are not really intimate, right? And let me tell you something about that mindset. You become bitter. Men typically can't carry seed like that. There's things that happen to them. There's a need. So when I tell you there's a need for men to be intimate, it's not Dr. Gordon's on here. God bless you, man. It's not like, oh, we just want it. No, men need to, right? And so because we are made the way we're made, we're designed the way we're designed, there is a need, right? And there's a need for intimacy, there's a need for closeness, there's a need to appropriate, right? What's the right?
Reproduce.
Yeah, but there's another word for it. But there's a need to be intimate. There's a need for love and touch and affection. We are made for that. God made us that way. So if God made us that way, and if we're not receiving or getting out of our marriage that need met, because it is a need, if that need is not being met, then there needs to be a conversation about how can we make this work, right? If there's not, if and it could be all kinds of things. And look, again, when you first meet somebody and you're getting a relationship and you're building a relationship, the reality is this: people come with all kinds of appetites, experiences, right? All kinds of things that they bring to a marriage, right? Your past experiences are out there. Here it is, you was doing all kinds of stuff, right? You marry somebody who used to go to orgy parties and go to have a heavy activity in pornography and had multiple partners, had all this other stuff going on in them, and they have this appetite, right? What do you do with that? What about those who come out of these other relationships, same-sex relationships, right? You have men who've been delivered and healed and what so have you. Now they're just they were bisexual, and now they're just going to get saved and get delivered. They married a woman, and that's who they are. What happens to that desire, right? For him to be penetrated, or for him to penetrate that way, what happens to that? Or that's set free and delivered? Not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. But do we have these conversations? No. Do we prepare our women for this? No. Do we prepare our men for this? No. Why? Because we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to deal with it. None of my business. The Bible says, the bedroom's undefiled, and marriage is holy. So let's keep it. No, but you need to talk about why you laying next to your wife watching pornography and masturbating. Right. So let's talk about why that's happening. Why it is that you are trying to hit everything in the church and your wife is sitting right next to you in the church? Why is that happening? Why is the pastor got 4 or 5 different children run through the church from other women? Why is that happening? Because there's a problem, and this problem with sex, right? A problem with character, a problem with restraint, and that's because there's certain needs not being fulfilled. Okay, and the older we get, and the older we get, hopefully sometime eventually it'll start dying down a little bit. Right? And that's what a lot of people are hoping for. I hope I get I get this thing under control, because I don't have that capacity no more. I don't have that desire no more, and I hope I can just get over that, and I'll be all right. You might, but not necessarily, because guess what? A man, if he keeps himself viral and healthy, he can actually continue to have sex until he's well in his 60s and 70s, right? By that time, a lot of our women, they're like, well, I hope it works out. Right? Because we know that we're like passing ships in the night. Right? A woman's heightened sexuality is heightened around the 40s and 45, 50s, and then the men's is in his 20s. Right? So what kind of joke was God playing with that one? Right? So you gotta be able to keep up, Doc. Right? And so and then you start trying to bring all this other stuff into your marriage to cause some level of stimulation. But the problem is you bring in all kinds of corruption and perversion into your marriage. And now, man, you got to contend with that. Right? You can't compete with the guy on TV. Right? And you can't let your wife think that you can. And here it is, you having massive coronaries and heart attacks, and you going crazy trying to figure it out and bringing all kinds of toys. I had a young man one time ask me, he said, man, my wife, this is in the church, and I'm glad I always kept my my mind open to talk about this to my men and women. And he said to me, he says, man, my wife wants to go to a toy party. And he says, what do you think about that? I said, brother, it don't matter what I think about that. I'm like wondering, what do you think about that? Right? So what do you think about her going to a toy party? I mean, does that not create some level of concern? Right? Does that not create some level of, anxiety? Like, man, whoa, what's going on here that you need to reach outside and get toys?
And maybe she tried to talk to him, but maybe that woke him up.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah, right?
Maybe she's been giving the flags, and he just, it was going over his head. And she's like, I'm going to a party, a sex toy party. Boom. Do you get it now?
And you know what was interesting about that, sweetheart? This was interesting about that. Now, on another conversation, his wife came to me and said she was not being satisfied. And of course, I was uncomfortable because she approached me, just her. And I'm never comfortable with those conversations as it relates to the church. But I said to her, I said, well, you need to really have a conversation with him. And I referred a book that I knew about to help deal with that particular issue. And so she did do the right thing, as it were, to come to a pastor and ask a question about how to help her, how to address her issue with her not being sexually satisfied by her husband in her relationship. And so I was like, well, and so I didn't ask questions. Like I could, because I was alone. And at that time I was actually going through a divorce myself. So I definitely wasn't gonna have that conversation. But I said, she started telling why, I'm not satisfied. I'm not being fulfilled. And I said, well, there's a reason why he's not able. And I gave her a book. I told her what book to go get for her husband. And I said, there's a way to help him get there with you, right? There's a way, there's a technique that you can utilize to help with his, because apparently he had what we call premature ejaculation. And a lot of men suffer from that because at young ages, young boys are doing a lot of masturbating, right? And so when you're masturbating as a young child, I know church folk don't want to talk about this, but when you're masturbating as a young boy, the objective is to orgasm, right? So all you're thinking about is getting the orgasm. So your body's conditioned to, okay, I get it. So you out there pounding away, pumping away, trying to get an orgasm, right? Trying to get an orgasm. For the sake of that thrill. Now, what happens to you, your body gets conditioned to just trying to get to that. So when you get married, the first thing your body's very patternistic, it's very mechanical, right? So it conditions itself to its environment. So if you're just trying to get off and trying to masturbate, then your body's gonna say, okay, that's all we're doing. We're just trying to masturbate. So you'll get worked up, boom, explode, you're done. Right. But when you are dealing with a woman who didn't do that kind of stuff and don't know their body, it takes a little longer to be fulfilled. Right. So when you just jumping in and going hard and boom, you're done. Like, and you know what, a man gets done, he's done, unless he can get himself back together and so forth. And some can, some can't. But the point is, that's the issue, right? So when you develop this condition, which we refer to as EP, right? A PE, premature ejaculation, it causes you not to fulfill, right? And you have to work on how to fix that. So that was the issue that she had with her husband. She didn't realize what it was because no one talked to her about it. So I said, buy this book, you guys figure it out and go ahead. Now, after that conversation, he comes along and says she wants to go to a toy party. I'm like, whoa, when somebody says, well, I haven't, my husband ain't touched me. Okay, so did you ask why? Did you ask why? And then no, they never asked why. They never asked why, because it's like almost begging. They see themselves at why do I have to ask them? Here I am, I'm here, and I said, have you made any advancements to him? No, because he should be. See, all these things we never talk about. Have you ever told him? If you like to be pursued, you got to tell him. I get more aroused when you pursue me.
Yes.
When you chasing me,
have a conversation,
right?
You have to have a conversation, even when it's difficult. And that's what marriage is. You're still learning each other. But let's say if you've been together for a few years and the conversation, you have to keep that up. You have to exercise that all the time. You can't assume, okay, well, he should because, or she should because we've been together this long and he should know me by now, or she should know me. You always have to have a conversation.
Mhm.
Why are we haven't touched each other in a month? Is there anything going on?
Mhm.
Um, are you still attracted to me?
Mhm.
Are you still in love with me? Do you still love me like when we
Mhm.
first got together? Like
Mhm.
what happened? And a lot of times, sickness, things happen to
Mhm.
us. Our bodies change, we just change. But we have to keep that conversation open. Like, let's talk about it, without being frustrated,
Mhm.
without being, just with our
Well,
defenses up.
the thing is too, sweetheart, is that when you have those conversations, like if you ask the question, this is the reality of it all.
Hmm.
When a woman comes to her husband and says, "Why aren't you touching me? Are you attracted to me?" He's gonna say, "Yeah, I'm attracted to you. Of course I am. I'll love to touch you. I know I'm tired or whatever." He's not going to say, "Well, no, no, I'm not." Now it's like, "Well, why not?" So guys don't want to
Oh.
walk down that street, right? But that's the reason why open communication is important,
Hmm.
because if you create an environment where we can have these conversations
Hmm.
and it will not look bad, or I am human and I am,
Hmm.
vulnerable and I am who I am, that could be the conversation. But no man it's like, but think about this, and I understand it, but this is what we have to overcome. Guy says, a woman walks to her husband and says, "Do I look fat in this dress?" Man, you better not. Right? Because you don't want that smoke. You don't want that
So,
smoke.
how do you think he should answer if she does look fat in the dress?
He should say, "Listen, I don't want that smoke." No.
No, see, this is what we're talking about. You have to have these conversations. You have to have the hard conversations. And trust me, you would rather hear it from your husband through his lips than through a third party. So, if you're going to ask an honest question,
Be-
expect an honest
that's right.
answer.
That's right.
So it takes two. It takes you asking it because it was courageous of you to ask. So be, prepared for a courageous answer,
And that
you know.
and that's true. So how would I? Because you've asked me that
I
question,
have.
and I'd be like, "Yeah, you look a little
And see, and
little
that's,
tight in that.
but
That look a
you
little
know what?
snug
But see,
right through
guess
there."
what? I had to prepare myself. So
'Cause-
that's my fault. I can't lash out and get upset with you. Say, wow, why you think I'm fat? Well, how long you think I look fat? Like, when did this start? I can't do that. Like, when? This morning or last week or last month? We have to be prepared. If you're going to ask something that's sensitive, something that you're saying, you know how sensitive you are, but you want an honest answer from your spouse, be prepared because you're going to get an honest
yeah,
answer.
create the atmosphere of transparency
Absolutely.
and honesty, because that's something. And again, it's like this: we wait until it gets bad before we fix it.
And that's not good.
Like, and it doesn't. I'll give you an analogy. I'm having like, um, I'm having tooth work, right? And I had a root canal that failed, and I had to get an implant, and I had another situation, right? So here it is. I have a pain in my tooth, and it's killing me for about a
Mm.
year almost, I think, right?
Mhm.
And I'm dealing with it. I'm chewing on the other side. I'm kind of going through. Meanwhile, I'm having an implant on this side. But the reality is, by the time I got to my dentist, the pain was too severe,
Mm.
right? And she was like, "Well, there's not much we can do to prevent that, but no, to fix it, only I could do is try to fix it, restore it, pull it, or give you another implant." Right? That was the options. Excuse me. But if I had gone, now I hadn't been to the dentist in a year, over a year, right? But if I had gone and did some preventive care, she probably could have prevented me from having a toothache. See, we wait until we have pain, until we have issues in our marriage, in our relationships, before we check up.
Yeah.
You got to do checkups. I tell people all the time, you need to go. I don't care if your marriage is doing cartwheels and backflips, and
Mhm.
you are in bliss. You should always be willing to at least sit in
Always.
front of somebody, examine your marriage, when you touch someone on your body, does this hurt? Does that hurt? How do you feel about that? If
Yes.
something's wrong, you gotta create that environment. The minute you cut that off, right? The minute you try to have that conversation when you are at pain or it's a problem, you are already behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's always important. So like my wife was saying, that she could ask me questions because she said she has to brace herself. Why?
Yeah.
Because we create an environment where we're integral, where we're honest, where we're transparent, right?
Mhm.
Because we realize that being in that space is so vital
Mhm.
to our marriage, to the health of our marriage. You don't want your husband or your wife to leave the home, unfulfilled, unsatisfied, unloved, gratified. Those things they matter. And let me tell you something. A predator, let me tell y'all, male or female, a predator can tell whether or not a person is being satisfied or a person is open or vulnerable. There's a certain look, there's a certain sense, there's a certain reality. And so if your wife and your husband is not fulfilled, that's your responsibility. And if you have an issue in your body, good to see you, my brother, in your body, in your health, then we need to have that conversation. How can we find other ways to satisfy each other?
Yes.
If I can't do such and such and XYZ, it's my responsibility to make sure that you are fulfilled. It's your responsibility to make sure I'm fulfilled. If I got some other issues going on in me, right, some perversions that I hadn't dealt with, we need to talk about that. Why? Because where else I'm gonna talk about it at? Yeah. Right. If you were in a lifestyle before you got married and you knew that was in that lifestyle, and I'm going to tell you that this is creeping up. Where am I going to go? Who am I going to talk about that with? Don't bring that over here because I don't do that. I need to talk about it to somebody. Right. You're the one. Yes. Right. You ding ding. You're the one. I need to deal with this with you because it's safe here. I can get help here. Yes. Right. If we got to go to a therapist to get fixed or get something worked out, we can do that together. But at least you know my plight. At least you know my issue. At least you know how to minister to me. You can even protect me. Yes. Right. Because see, sometimes that's important as well. So if you know your companion is susceptible to a certain thing or certain stuff, there's a way. I remember a pastor by the name of Ron Carpenter. Right. Ron Carpenter is a great preacher out in South Carolina. I've heard him several times, and he talks about how he struggled with pornography. He was addicted to pornography, so much so when he traveled to preach out, he would go and watch pornography on his televisions at the hotel. He would, and just give you all a side note here, for those of you that want to stick your head in the sand and not deal with this. Because I know a lot of church folks, especially leaders, don't want to talk about this because this is none of my business. It is your business. Your churches are in trouble because you are not talking about this. Anyway, so statistically, y'all know I'm a numbers guy. I'm always gonna say that 75% of whenever pastors or conferences are done with church, especially church leaders, pastors conference, leaders conferences, the rate of pornography rentals in hotels skyrocket. And
what?
Yep, the rate of rental and pornography in hotels skyrocket. So whenever there's a preacher, God bless you. Whenever there's a preachers in the community are in town, the rates of the pornography rental goes to the roof. And they're like, why does that happen? Well, that's because a lot of men are struggling with pornography. A lot of church pastors and leaders are struggling with pornography. And the reality is, so if you have someone who is struggling with this, so Ron Carpenter had a real issue with pornography, and to the point where he had to deal with it. And his wife found the stuff on his computer, and she's wondering, how are you, man of God, with thousands of members, and you are preaching all over the world, and you're doing all this church and godly stuff, and here it is, you battling with pornography, right? And here it is, you great man of God, great anointed. Right. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because he talked about it. So I'm not talking about stuff that he hasn't talked about. But there's a lot of other pastors and leaders I know struggle with stuff that I'll never bring to the forefront because it's none of my business to talk about it. And it's not for public consumption. But this pastor said, I struggled with it. I struggled badly with it. And so he said that he told his wife after he got caught, right? With all this pornography on his computer. He said,
Mhm.
I told her that, I was a young boy and I lived next to a guy who was a pornography producer, and he made pornography and he had all kinds of videos and stuff. And his son was my friend, and we used to hang out and watch porn all day long.
Wow.
So he became addicted to it. Right. But now he's saved and sanctified and filled and preaching all over the country. You know, Ron Carpenter, this is his testimony. He'll tell you about it. But he couldn't break that addiction. Now, he might have gotten away from it for a while, but he couldn't break it. So his wife said, so they had to deal with it together. Right. So it came to the forefront. And he said, and since then, every computer he has, all his phones, she checks it for him. Say, listen, I want you to go in and check the history and go through here. Here's my phone. Here's my computer. Here's my stuff. You go with me when I see the bill. He had to completely open up to her to help him, prevent him from continuing in that lifestyle, to the point that he was ultimately delivered. Right. And so again, we need to, how do we manage that? How do we minister to that? Instead of calling the brother dirty or nasty or filthy or some deviant, where that makes us hide, makes us cover up, makes us withdraw, we have these little dirty secrets that we got. It's funny because every time I have a computer guy, David Rodriguez, and he would told me that he worked for a corporate. He said, man, you'll be surprised what you see on these people's computers. He would tell me, I go, the stuff, they think they're deleting it and erasing it. He said, there's footprints everywhere. And let me tell you something. I have no problem with opening up any of my devices. I'll be like, here you go. Look, here you go. And when they take it, he'll look through stuff. He knows I'm a pastor. He knows I'm a man of God. I have no shame. I'm like, well, wink, wink. No, nope. I don't do none of that. I don't have to, because I don't allow that to be part of my life. And so we need to be able to have those conversations and make sure that we talk to these things. You got anything, babe? Because I want to
go ahead.
I remember one time, I'll never forget this conversation that Bishop McKinley had. And God bless him. He's gone on to be with the Lord. A great bishop, Archbishop McKinley, out of Brooklyn, and he had his whole forum on sexuality in the church, and they were able to ask all kinds of questions about sexuality and what that means, and had difficult questions about, is it right for a woman to withhold her body? Is it wrong for a man to withhold his body? And we know the scripture, right? We know that in 1 Corinthians 7th chapter, it tells you that when you get married, your body is no longer your own. But then that kind of goes into another conversation, because again, good to see you, Lady Finder, Lady Gordon, Lady Woods, Elder Woods Capola, those who are on, those who came in. Oh, my man, God bless you. My brother, my cousin's here. Pastor Griffin is here. He's going to be with us next week, him and his wife. Anyway, so he said that, and I want to throw it out real quick, but he said that, so they asked all kinds of questions about sexuality, and he had some really interesting ways of thinking about it. And I was kind of shocked, because I was very staunched in my religiosity and my Pentecostalism. And but he was very free and liberated about certain things. And this is what he said. It shocked me. He says, my wife's body is my body. Right. And he really believed that. He said, if I decide to touch my chest or my arm or my leg or my behind or my private part anywhere, I can, because it's my body. Right. He says, and if I decide to touch my wife's body anywhere in public, whatever, that's my body.
In public?
Yes. So he said, listen, this is what he did. He said that they were out to dinner, and somebody, there was a witness to this. They were out to dinner, right? And they were all at the table talking, and he leaned over, he grabbed his wife's body, and he grabbed her breasts. And he just started rubbing her breast. And people were like, what's going on here? Oh, what's happening there? Oh my goodness, what's going on there? And like, so of course it looks weird, and it looks perverted, and it looks, unseemly and shouldn't be done. But he was like, do you really believe it's your body or not? Right? That was his point. And I was like, oh, good point. But of course I wouldn't do that, because I don't. But again, I saw his point. But let's delve a little deeper, because this right here is going to, I really hope, help some of y'all when it comes to this, because this is why we are really, y'all need to please share this, y'all. Please share this, like this. Please share this, comment, say something to us. But this is really going to really shock you. So a question arose in the forum with Bishop McKinley, and the question was this: what if you married a man who was once a homosexual, right? And he decided that that lifestyle is no longer for him, and he's going to get married and marry a woman and kind of follow that out, right? And so that man now is married, and he's married, but then all of a sudden he has now in this relationship, this is the way he phrased it. He liked to be penetrated. Back then they talked about penetrated. Now we call them tops and bottoms, right? That's the new.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So you have a top and you have a bottom. Okay. So he was a bottom. And so you know what that means. I don't have to get graphic, but he was a bottom. And he said that, this guy, what if, he would go to his wife and say to him, listen, I'm having these urges, I'm having these issues, I just, can you penetrate me? Can you help me? Now, that conversation is tough, right? What do you say to that? So he said this was the conversation. And so he opened it up to what people would say, right? And I'm curious. I don't know. I should open up for.
I think you should.
Okay, so I'm gonna give those of you on who ain't scared to talk, right? Because again, this will help you deal with the issues that we're dealing with in the church. And I'm not promoting anything either way. I'm just asking you, as those of you who are pastors, say if you get a young man or even a young woman who comes to you and they come out of a certain lifestyle that or even if they come out of a lifestyle which requires a lot of, let's say, what's that called, S&M, when they beating people and whipping chains and belts and all that stuff. They come out of a certain lifestyle. But let's talk about this lifestyle. Young man comes to his wife and they're married, and he's come out of a homosexual lifestyle and he likes a certain thing. He was a bottom in that relationship, but now he wants to be married, but he has a strong urge and these feelings of wanting to have this thing done to him, right? He wants to be a bottom, but he's going to her and he's asking her to help him with this. What does she do? What advice would you give her or them, right? So I want to hear from y'all. We're going to leave it open for a minute. If y'all be brave enough to talk. Y'all got us out here talking like we ain't.
Yeah.
But y'all, if anybody brave enough to talk.
Absolutely. But there was no counseling. Let me just inquire.
Before?
After that question. Or during, actually, before the question.
I'm going to tell you, I'm not I'm not going to tell you what he said. Okay. Well, I guess I could because it was public. But let's say they're leaving, honey. They don't want to talk about this.
Okay.
The numbers are going down. They like, no, Pastor, you ain't drag me into this. No.
But see, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, right.
This is what we're talking about. If you leave because of this question or the topic, this is exactly what we're talking about. And please come to the conference, because when you come to the conference, these matters that we run from, they will be discussed, because the people, as your cousin posted here, need to be free.
That's right.
We are bound. We run, we hide from these topics. They need to be discussed, because what happens is what's done in the dark, it comes to the light, and then you want to talk about it, and you want to explain, right?
That's right.
Then you want to talk, and I had this, and okay, but this could have been resolved if a conversation was done much sooner. Therapy was given much sooner, but because we want to keep things hidden, we want to keep things in the dark, exposure is coming. Exposure is coming. Now is the time to talk about this stuff, and don't feel shame. That's the enemy. He wants you to feel guilty. He wants you to be clothed in shame. But no, Christ said, I come that you be free, and whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And you don't understand, when we talk about this stuff, we're setting people free and we're shaming the enemy.
That's right.
The enemy is being shamed. We know what shame feels like. We know what guilt feels like. But see, we're free. You're looking at two free people right now.
That's right.
And so we want to talk about this so that we can set others free and say, you know what? Yeah, I lived that lifestyle. So what? I'm done. I could talk about it now. I could help somebody else, because I know I'm not the first and I'm not going to be the last.
That's right. So Lady Finder, Lady Finder is a tremendous gift. I remember I went to Chicago to do a conference with her and her cousin. and she was telling us about what she came through in her marriages or grew awesome testimony. But
Mhm.
she puts out here on this, she says that the male G spot is in the anal.
Mhm.
So now again, right? So y'all wondering, now y'all know what the G spot is, right? Right? That's that spot that makes people go crazy. And it's a sexual arousing area that's sensitive to the body that creates all this kind of sexual things that happen to the body, right? Orgasms and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
But again, if that's true, I'm not sure. I'm not, I mean, that's a good point.
But we're gonna have someone at the conference to
That's
discuss.
right. So we have people at this. We have someone at this conference that talks about this very subject: sexuality in marriage,
Yes, yes,
sexuality, how to spark it, how to keep it going, right?
yes.
How to keep your marriage healthy. And you, as you grow, you start learning how to tap into that, and it shouldn't be
Mhm.
considered dirty and filthy. And well, this is not appropriate. Where it is, because y'all ain't talking about nowhere else.
Yeah, and
You,
this is
where is it at? Y'all don't, even in your women groups, you don't talk about this stuff.
yeah.
Y'all talking about slaying demons and talk about trying to be strong and be courageous and be powerful. That's what y'all talk about in women's conference. But you need to tell those women how to be sensual and how to
But
be sexual and how to please their husbands and how to find out how to please them.
yeah, and why isn't it appropriate? Because it's appropriate to watch it on TV. It's
Mm,
appropriate to see it in the movies. It's
that's right.
appropriate in songs.
That's right.
It's
That's
appropriate everywhere else. But now when we want to come together and have a conversation about it to
mm,
help,
that's right.
to have a dialogue here, it's inappropriate.
Yeah, it's
And
inappropriate.
yeah, we know it. This is very appropriate. Now is the time
That's
for the
right.
conversation.
And we need to talk about it because it's oozing out the sides,
Yes,
right? It's coming out in social media, it's coming out into the world, it's coming
yes,
out to in your children, your divorces, and your all these things that are going on. And you're like, well, I didn't, I had this thing going on, and I was struggling with my sexuality, but wait, man, tabloids out here, you
Mhm.
crying now? Well, you crying because you exposed, right?
Exactly.
You crying because now it's out here. You're
Yes.
not crying because you're trying to get help, or you're trying
Hmm.
you're crying because you got caught,
Hmm.
right? And
That's what.
so, and that's the
Yes.
problem,
Why
right?
are you crying? Are you crying because you have this thing going on with you, or are you crying because you got caught?
So Elder Gracie
Yes.
says here, well,
Yes.
if he had gone to a counselor, to counseling to help overcome those feelings in certain situations, and they are also as man and wife went for sessions together, how to handle or to get through it, or how you help one another. That's
Yes.
great, right? Because you're right, that is what you got to deal with. So we realize that. But the great thing about that, Elder, is, to your point, is you talked about it.
Hmm.
He went to her, he recognized, they had that transparency to
Yes.
say, listen, my past, I told you already, let's go to get some therapy, because I'm still not over this, I'm still
Yes.
not past this, I'm still having these urges,
Yes.
right, on these type of things. And so you should be able to deal with that, right, and be able to say, I still love you through that. That is really what intimacy is,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it
That
is.
is
Yes.
really what relationship is. Like
Yeah.
when you have that wife where you can say, I really struggle in this area.
Yeah.
Or that husband say, I really struggle in this
And no
area.
judging,
And
no
no judging. You say,
judgment.
wow, okay. So how can we work through this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Let's figure it out together.
Yeah. Let's
Let's go
stand.
let's go on this journey. I don't have the answer. Neither one of you can have the answer, but just be there for one another.
But we do the wrong thing. We take it personal. Well, I ain't good enough. Well, you
Yeah, no, no. Now you have the problem.
right? We take, well,
So
I
yeah,
well,
no,
no, but
it's
I was here before. I had this
yeah,
before I showed up. Before,
yeah.
well, so it was, if you ain't ready for this and you ain't ready for nothing.
That's
Well,
yeah.
no, you got it. Because again,
Mhm.
this is covenant,
Yes.
right? This is my safe place.
Yes.
This is the place I can talk about these things. This is the place I can deal with these things. And I do need to let's go get help.
Yeah.
Right. I remember when I first got married, and it was about a year in, and I said, I need to go see my therapist.
Mhm.
Right. And she was like, why? Is something wrong? Whatever. I says, no. I said, I just need to talk to him. I need to kind of, talk about this, because it was new to me. This time in my life, and I was very open and very vulnerable, and I had some things that I really had to settle in with and get off my chest. And there's nothing I couldn't talk to her about, but it was really my therapist was able to help me because he saw me through this journey. So I can tell him, listen, man, I'm in this space now, and still kind of struggling with trust, and I begin to tell him, I said, I'm still struggling with trust, and I have no reason not to trust my wife. She's there, she's on time, she's committed, she's all this stuff. And I said, I know there's nothing going on. It's me. I realize it's me. I need to find ways to be able to calm my fears, right, and handle it. So he walked me through some things that I need to resolve and settle in so that I can come back to my marriage and be healthy. Now, we weren't fighting. It wasn't no bitterness. It wasn't no throwing no rocks. I just knew that something in me was reverting back to the old me, where I never trusted before. Everybody was a villain. There was no woman that was faithful in my mind. And so I had to get that. And I knew it wasn't her. Because there was nothing there. I knew it was me. You follow what I'm saying? So, but again, once you get to that point, I said, well, I got, and I talked to her about this. I said, I got to deal with this. I got to get this resolved because this is going to ruin this marriage if I don't work on my problem. Right. And so that's what you have to learn how to do. If you got a problem on any level, this is the one place you should be able to come to get some help and get some resolve.
And I remember when you came home, I wanted so bad for you to tell me. In my mind, I knew it was confidential, but I'm like, okay, now I'm going to need some help because he's not telling me. But, I had to work myself, work through that, knowing that.
And the thing is, I did say, I said, listen, I'm having I'm having trust issues. And you were like, and your response to that was, okay, well, you're going to see after a while.
Yeah,
right?
That's all you can do.
Yeah, because she knew that there was nothing she can do outside of that. It had nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
It had to do with me. And so she was like, well, I'll be consistent.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll know. Yeah. Right. And that's what happens. That's what growing and mature. But see, she allowed me to have that time to heal and continue with my process. Right. Because I'm out in this vulnerable space. I'm in this space of lack of trust and all this other stuff, traumas. And when you can get someone who can say, listen, I got your back. Hook or crook, sink or swim, I got you. I ain't going nowhere. We ain't going nowhere. We're going to work this through, and nothing that we can't overcome. But you can't have that if you don't have that open honesty about something, especially because sex is always this competition space. Who can last the longest, who can perform the best, who get the more. It's always, especially with men. Men always feel like we got to conquer, rah, rah, roo, roo, and sometimes we miss it because, women ain't thinking like that. They're
No.
To them it's something.
We're affectionate.
Yeah.
We just want your love and your affection, your respect. We want that.
That's right.
And
you're on, if you're on this whole thing, I gotta make you bump your head 10 times and knock you around the room and let you fall out and you passing out. That's all man stuff. Women are not thinking like that. And I'm sure women want to be satisfied and pleased. And we got that. And if you've been in a situation where your tendencies or your appetite is off the chain, you need to work that out.
Yeah.
When you marry somebody or you look and get serious, you need to tell them, listen, I gotta have like this. You gotta punch me in the chest 10 times, kick me in the neck, pinch my nose and pull my ear, and that becomes wonderful. If that's, you got to talk about that, because if you don't,
that is a conversation.
If you don't, like, I don't beat nobody.
Right.
I don't hit. I don't want nothing violent. It was like, I need you to hit me 10 times. Even though don't hit me. I don't like to hit.
Yeah.
Right. So if you got a hit problem, I'm not the one. And find somebody who does that kind of stuff, but that's not me.
Right.
And you got to know enough about your own body to know that that's not you.
Right. That's why I always go back to, you have to have that conversation. Now, for those of you, like for you and I, our relationship happened pretty fast. So of course we didn't know each other fully, obviously. I didn't know much about you, but we knew what we had in common. We knew what our intentions were. We did ask questions about each other. pretty relevant questions, important questions,
Yeah,
like
all kinds of
how
issues.
we would live, how
Yeah.
we would like. I knew for me, I wanted to know what you expected. Now I know
Hmm.
there's a saying that you shouldn't have any expectations, but you do. Reality is, you realistically you do have expectations,
Hmm.
and I wanted to make sure
Hmm.
that I would be able to meet your
That's
expectation
right.
on a daily basis, regularly, from sun up to
Hmm.
sundown,
Hmm.
day after day, week after week, month after month, for a lifetime.
That's right.
We don't want to assume. And a lot of times, we go through that first phase of the relationship, when we're attracted to one
Hmm.
another, that
Infatuation.
infatuation.
Yeah.
We're so in love and we're so enamored by that person. We just want to be with them. We love the way they sound, how they look, their
Hmm.
mannerism, their demeanor, just everything on the surface level we just love. And oh my goodness, if they just go to another deeper level under the surface, oh my goodness, it just blows our mind.
Hmm.
We can't sleep, we can't eat, we can't even function. And God forbid, if you're in school studying, you can't even study, you can't even keep up your grades like you want to. It's just something. However, when reality sets in, you have to have a mind to think about, the day to day
Hmm.
after the
Hmm.
infatuation,
Yeah.
after that obsession that wears off. Okay, how do you really live? What do
Mm.
you really like? What do you really expect? What do you really want?
Hmm.
I have to be around. I want to know, what do you like when you get upset? What
Yeah.
bothers you? What's a trigger for you?
Mm.
How do you sound when you get upset? How do you
Mm.
look at me? It's all these things we have to think about and we have to have a conversation about. So yeah, what do you like to eat? What do you expect when you come home,
Hmm.
from work? And just what,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
that's what these conversations mean. And they're
Mhm.
good because once you pass that stage, because the first thing is consistency.
Mhm.
One of the major issues
Yes.
with relationships is a lack of consistency.
Yes.
Do you still, do you still have that for me? Do
Mhm.
you still like being around me? Do you still think I'm the cat's meow and the dog's bow wow? Do I, are you, is it still that if it's not, what's going on? And it may not be
Yes.
anything. You might be settling into your relationship.
Yeah.
you know Elder Gracie said something
Oh,
here.
wow.
So she
Okay.
says, it may be hard, it may be a hard subject to talk about, but running is not the answer. For you may not know what to say at that moment. Good point, right?
Mhm.
But you just can't ignore your spouse.
That's right.
That leaves them to run elsewhere
Yep.
when they want to work it out
Yep.
with the one they love,
Yep.
right? Especially if your spouse seems to have all the answers. Now there's silence, and that's one of the
Yes.
things that you shut people down. Like, no, that's
Yes.
not why it is. This is what it is.
Yeah.
No, hear each other out,
Here,
right?
that's right.
Yeah,
Listen.
and it's okay. It's I'll tell you, one of the wonderful things about being connected is that you can really sit back and say, let me put myself in your shoes. Let me put myself
Exactly.
in your predicament. Let me see, how can I relate to that? How can
Mhm.
I relate to that?
Yes, take that on,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Let me. Okay, I guess I can see that. I guess I can deal with that. I guess I can understand how you would feel there. You know, and to that other point we talked about with the man on top, bottom, whatever. Um, Bishop did have advice, which I don't particularly agree with, but I think that people should get, first of all, if you come out of a relationship, you talk to your spouse and get help, get counseling,
Mhm.
like Elder Gracie said.
Yes.
Get be able to deal with it. Realize that there's something that is going on with that individual. If that is something, now listen, Bishop, there's some theologians, there's some people believe that if he brings it to you, then help him, right? That's part of your
Yeah.
responsibility as a wife.
Yes.
That may put you off. That may be something that you can't see yourself doing, but that's something that you got to see. That's when it says the blood is undefiled, right?
Mhm.
It's private. And
Yes.
again, I don't have any judgment or any advice in the area. That's something that I'm just not capable of advising.
Yes.
But my response will always be seek the Lord, right?
Absolutely.
And listen, get help, go to therapy, find someone that you can really work those things out, have understanding with each other, make sure
Mhm.
that whatever you go, whatever your decisions are, you are both good with it. And
Yes.
it's not always what makes you comfortable, because when you are dealing with matters like this in marriage, it's not always what makes you comfortable. It's really what helps the marriage work.
Yeah.
Every time you do something for your spouse, it doesn't feel good to you.
No,
Sometimes it's not
no,
for you.
it's
It's
not
for the
for you.
it's for the
Yes.
other one, and
Yeah.
for the one you love, the one you make sacrifices for, the one that you desire to be happy. The one you said, I will work on your fulfillment. You can come to me with your troubles and issues.
Mhm.
But you should not be in church frustrated. You should not be sitting there fantasizing about some other dude somewhere
Mm-mm.
or some other woman walking by. That should not be the case.
No.
And if you are struggling in that area, then you need to get help. You need to ask the Lord to help you. Talk to your wife about it. Go to therapy. Get some help. Fast, right?
Fast and pray.
And really
Absolutely.
ask the Lord to help. Relieve that, remove that. I would encourage you, couples, pray together on every morning. Come together, have an agreement as to what's permittable in a relationship and what isn't,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes you have to learn how to protect your marriage, because some of these things that the world does is not really protecting you.
Yeah.
It will leave your marriage exposed.
Yes.
You hear these guys out here, leaders out here, having these swinging parties, man, and before you know it, your wife is swinging without you.
Mm.
Man, your husband swing without you.
Yeah.
You opened that door,
Right.
right? You let that stuff into your relationship.
Yeah.
And that's not why. You might be trying to be hip and worldly, but that don't work in the believer's life.
Yeah.
So that's all I have tonight. Anything you want to share, sweetheart?
Yeah. No. Anything that's of the world is not for the believers. The world is not on our side. You know what's funny is that we, the church, the called out, we have the answers. We're supposed to have the answers for the world, not the world having the answers for us. We're you know why? Because of who we worship,
That's right.
right? So we have to think about that. And again, it goes back to these little subtleties. We allow something to happen. We allow things to slip through and slide. Oh, it's okay. Oh, it's so small. And then these things grow up to be a big monster like the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
And then we can't do anything with it. Then
That's
we're
true.
being controlled by it.
That's right. That's right.
So we have to be careful with worldly things.
That's
we
right.
we have to seek counsel, godly counsel.
That's
And
right.
it is out there. And guess what? It's at this conference.
It's at this conference. You're right.
You have to come.
Yeah, you want to be,
even if it's not for you, it's for somebody you know.
yeah, and there is some things that there's a plethora of things that you can always find help. We got people who come in talking about budgeting. It's for singles. We got a great uh, list of workshops, seminars for singles, and we have people who are qualified to talk to in this matter. And there are people who are skilled. So, but I want to say to you, those of you who are on, as I promised, we have a special for you. I have a coupon. It's worth $100. $100 off of the actual registration. And if you register, you can get this coupon. Now, how do you get this coupon? You have to inbox me. Okay. You have to inbox me. And as a matter of fact, no, don't inbox me. I'm going to put it out here.
Yeah, put it out. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what it is. So you have a coupon of $100 off of this conference, and the coupon, when you go to register, pick your courses and the class that you want to be in. This coupon is worth $100. So, like, if you are coming to the conference, you're by yourself, I think it's $198. Then it's just $98.
Wow.
Okay. So if you, and I said I was going to do inbox, but I'm going to put it out here now. If you register between now and tomorrow, I think it goes away on the 16th.
At midnight?
I think at midnight. I think it goes away tonight.
So
I've got 2 hours left. I think we might keep it for a little while to keep you in. But it's the coupon code is Family 2023. Okay. Family 2023. Register, put that code in. You have $100 off of this conference. Now, trust me, if you know anything about this conference, if you're coming as a couple, that will be $100 off the couple fee, right? So if you know anything about this conference, you will know that it's going to be absolutely amazing. You know anything about us and what we do, you will. It's I can't listen. We couldn't afford this conference at that price if we were doing it on a regular basis. So we're making it a special for those of you who may say, "Well, Pastor, I can't make it. I can't afford it. Is there a special rate?" Here it is. Okay, here it is. So if you go on and register today and tomorrow, you get use a coupon family 2028. There's no space in between family and 2020 and 23. Excuse me. There's no space. If you put that code in on the website, the website is itsmyfamily.org. Itsmyfamily.org. You will get $100 off of this conference. All right, so it's only for limited time, I think until tomorrow. And so you can register. I would encourage you go tonight. Go onto the website, pick your courses. You can always change your courses later, but put that code in. You will have $100 off this conference. Trust me when I tell you, it's going to be absolutely phenomenal, and you are going to find yourself tremendously blessed. And I believe out of this conference, there's going to be people getting married. I mean, you're going to find your companion. You might find them right there at the conference. All right, this is for the men and women. Please share this. Let somebody know that this is a special that we're running just for now. But if you put that code in, go into the website. It's itsmyfamily.org. Itsmyfamily.org. Register for the conference, and God is going to bless you. You will get a whole $100 coupon off this conference, and I can't. I don't know. I don't think we're going to ever be able to give this again. So please take advantage of it tonight. Okay. All right. That's all we have tonight. Thank you for sharing with us. Those who commented, those who shared, those who came in, please share, please like, and let someone know that, we're not leaving anything, no stone unturned. All right. The Lord bless you. Thank you to those who chimed in. Elder Gracie, Lady Finder, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. But we are excited about this conference. We were excited about marriages and relationships. We're excited about the healing and all these things. We really need to have these conversations. All right. The Lord bless you. Heaven smile upon you is our prayer. And hope to see y'all soon. Don't forget, Monday morning, we're back at it at prayer for the family. All right. Be well in Jesus' name.